Hello, hello. My name is Colin Bedell, and I am an astrologer. I am not sure where I should look, so let me try here. I'm so excited to be talking to you today about really probably my favorite topic within astrology, and that is relational intelligence, relational psychodynamics, or as otherwise known in our community, compatibility. So, what we want to know is that the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our relationships. Who, thank you, Esther Perel, who has said that. And so it behooves each and every one of us to invest in the quality of our relational education and the skills that allow us to function adaptively across relationship. Okay. And what I really appreciate about astrology is there are so many ways where we can theoretically, right, educate and teach ourselves and other people about what we ought to know, not just in theory, but in actual instructive behavior that allows us to work on our competence and our cognitive skills around relating and around communicating in relationships. And there's really so much that we can explore together in that field, from Venus and Mars to the relational houses put forward by Stephen Forrest, known as the Arc of Intimacy, houses 4 through 8. I've taught on that in the past before. He calls it the Arc of Intimacy. So there are many ways that we can unpack and explore what compatibility is in astrology, right? Because I believe that it's still a process. We're discovering new data, I think, as we go along, even though we're working with, an ancient science, but I think that we're trying to adapt what we know to be true about astrology with what the experts are saying on relational functioning today. So it's still incomplete, it's still a process, right? So what I want to do in this webinar, workshop, exploration class, whatever you want to call it, conversation, is explore the polarity dynamic in astrology, because I believe that there are probably more qualified and more effective teachers and astrologers out there who could teach on specific astrological arrangements around compatibility, maybe using Venus Mars descendant, lots of different qualities around relational compatibility energy. And I believe that the way that I can contribute the most effectively would it be around the concept of polarities in astrology, and actually what each of the six pairs in polarities and polarity dynamics have to teach us about ways in which we can depolarize our thinking around astrology and why that's really necessary. So again, there are an endless amount of ways for us to explore relationality in astrology. I firmly believe that. And so I have a difficult decision of picking just one, and it is on this conversation on the astrology of polarities. So now that I have talked ad nauseum for 5 minutes, laying the groundwork, I will load my presentation here. Bear with me. Okay, present. Okay. So on the astrology of alchemy and polarities is the title of this presentation. And so as you can see here, what I did was list and break down the 6 polarity pairs in astrology: Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sagittarius, Cancer, Capricorn, Leo, Aquarius, Virgo, and Pisces. So the reason why I outlined the polarities in astrology is because I believe that what really trips us up in compatibility and connection is when we fall into the either or dynamic. So what that sounds like in conflict and conversation is it's my way or it's your way, either or. I'm right, you're wrong, shut up, just listen, right? When I'm wondering, maybe one of the many ways that we can theorize connection and compatibility in astrology, right, is actually move from either or thinking to both and thinking as we interrogate and integrate the 6 polarities in astrology. Okay, so once again, the function of this compatibility workshop is to explore how we can move beyond either or thinking. Do I want to be in my Aries ruled freedom, or do I want to be in a Libra ruled relationship? Right? We don't want to be in either or. We want to go into both and thinking and ask, how can I maintain my sense of freedom and autonomy while choosing a relational partner and committing to them too? right? That's both end. And if we generate internal conversations around that, and of course, external dialogues and conversations about that, I believe that it will open up a lot of different worlds for us, right? Because as Austrian philosopher Ludwig Bentenstein has said, the limits of our language define the limits of our world. So that's just individually. And you want to ask yourself, do the limits of my language also define the limits of my world relationally? And if I'm only working with an either or dynamic, then what? At best, I'm working with a 50% world. Whereas if I go into these critical conversations with a both end conversation prompt or qualities that allow us to consider ways in which we can reaffirm the oppositions and polarity, is it possible that I will open up different worlds within my relationship? I think so, right? Because everything is possible with the conversation. So I would really like for us in this conversation to explore ways in which we could structure conversations among polarities, among oppositions in astrology, in an effort to actually find connection across contrast, right? To find peace with polarity, to move from gridlock and polarity to complementarity. Because, oh, does anybody need to be reminded of the polarized state of our world? No, right? So maybe there's never been a better time to talk about polarities. And that is why I wanted to do that with you together today. So again, here are the 6 pairs of polar opposites in astrology. They are Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sagittarius, Cancer, Capricorn, Leo, Aquarius, and Virgo and Pisces, from either or to both end. So Dawn Bedrogi, an astrologer, said, I don't think there's any more distrusted aspect than oppositions. New students often look at oppositions in charts and shudder or just sigh and give up. They assume those planets can't possibly be compatible. They have nothing in common. It's assumed that the 2 planets are completely at war with one another and will never connect. Synastry brings out the worst of assumptions about oppositions, that an opposition formed between 2 charts dooms those planets in some way, forcing the couple into a lifetime of power struggles, arguments, and misunderstandings. The opposition relates to whatever alien out there must be integrated. The energies of the 2 planets involved must be acknowledged, processed, and learned to act as one. No matter how strange the interaction must seem, it has to happen. There has to be some give and take, right? So I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork a little bit so that we can kind of acknowledge that oppositions and polarities in astrology are certainly not things that we would necessarily introduce when talking about compatibility, right? Because compatibility theoretically is about connection and understanding. And we presume that oppositions and polarities could never begin to understand one another because they're so different, right? And yes, they are so different. But I really should have done the air quotes around they could never assume to understand each other, because I'm taking the stand to say, well, maybe they can if they learn how to talk to each other differently, if they learn how to listen to each other differently, if they learn how to find understanding, not always agreement, but understanding, perhaps then we can be in a different world relationally, right? So that's just what I wanted to lay here with you. And then the way that I'm animating this quality around conversation and polarities in astrology is with a theory that really changed my life. And I do not say that casually. It has completely changed my life. And it's the theory of relational dialectics. And it was put forward by 2 American academics named Leslie Baxter and Barbara Montgomery in about 1995 or 1996, depending on when you look at whether or not their academic journal was published or when their book was published. But 1995, 1996, so fairly contemporary within the academic literature. And so relational dialectics, I think, is the way in which we can also look at polarities and astrologies with a different lens. Okay, so without any further ado, I will read to you the central cornerstone of relational dialectics. And it is a communications theory. And the theory could be interpreted as a knot of contradictions in personal relationships or an unceasing interplay between contrary or opposing tendencies. There are four main concepts that form the backdrop of relational dialectics, as well as four major assumptions. Relational dialectics assumes that one, relationships are not linear. Number two, relational life is characterized by change. And you're going to hate number three, but let's breathe through it together. You ready? Ooh. Number three, contradiction is the fundamental fact of relational life. And number four, communication is central to organizing and negotiating relational contradictions. Contradictions are the core concept of relational dialectics, and it is the dynamic interplay between unified oppositions. Isn't that beautiful? So a contradiction is a unified opposition. A contradiction is a unified opposition. The Libras who are probably listening are like, wow, this is what I needed to hear, maybe, or I hope that the Libras among us are like, so there's nothing wrong with me having contradictions. Of course not, right? A contradiction is formed whenever two tendencies or forces are interdependent. So there's a sense of unity with them, and we'll talk about the unity between Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, so on and so forth, right? Yet mutually negate one another, right? So the two tendencies or the forces of the two tendencies for the polarities and contradictions have to do with both unity and negation. They are interdependent. They need each other. And the struggle is that they mutually negate one another. Okay. So for example, one in relationship can simultaneously desire intimacy and distance, right? So here we see there is an interdependence between intimacy and distance, because there can't be intimacy if there's intrusion. So without distance, right, then are we intimate or are we enmeshed? Hello, right? But if we have too much distance and I can't see you, hear you, feel you, and believe that you are reliable and will be around, do I have intimacy? No, because you're not even here. Okay. So you could see just in this example that intimacy and distance can sometimes negate each other if you're not careful. How are you intimate if you're distant? Right? But then how are you intimate without space? Because without space and distance, intimacy becomes enmeshment. Okay. Intimacy can become intrusion. So there's a lot here. And I just think that in this part of the conversation, before we even go into the 6 pairs of polarities in astrology, I just want us to normalize, 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 right? So I jokingly mentioned the Libras here because as I'm recording this workshop in a Libran's home, there is no zodiac sign I've been able to find who has been able to better inhabit the normalizing around contradictions than Libra. So they understand I want both intimacy and distance. But what do we typically say about that in astrological spaces? Look at Libras. They're so indecisive. Are they indecisive, or are they just able to have a sense of unified opposition? And so they want two things. And sometimes they compete and sometimes they don't. And who are we to act like that isn't, according to Leslie Baxter and Barbara Montgomery, right? The fundamental fact of relational life. So these are big questions we got to ask ourselves. And again, I just think if we can normalize individually and relationally and professionally the fact that contradiction, fundamental fact of relational life, we will both want to be with our partners and want to be away from our partners. If we just say, hey, this is the fundamental fact of relational life, then we cannot be mired in shame, guilt, embarrassment, right? And instead, we can focus our time and effort and energy around skill building and educating ourselves around what communication, hello, the fourth assumption of relational dialectics, what communication skills we need to have that allow us to organize and negotiate our relational contradictions. So we can spend less time in guilt and shame about, oh my God, I married somebody and I both want to be away from them and I want to be with them at the same time. That must mean something's wrong with me in the relationship. And spend more time in, oh, actually, that's completely normal. So water is wet. Contradiction, the fundamental fact of relationships. Cool. Now, what do I need to do to really understand the kind of communication practices in order to organize and negotiate relational contradictions? Yeah. So I really just wanted to ground us in the color and the context and the connective tissue about polarities and relational dialectics theory so that we can then realize, oh, there wasn't anything wrong with me or this relationship. The only thing that was wrong with me was me believing that I had to choose A or B, this or that, black and white thinking, the either or, when instead I actually could have chosen the both end, right? I could have chosen the not only, but also. And I really believe I don't have any opposition other than my nodes, my obviously ascendant, descendant, and then just my Venus Mars opposition in Cancer Capricorn. So just Virgo, Pisces, Leo, Aquarius, and Cancer Capricorn. But I really feel the Cancer Capricorn one. And therefore, I just want to say that I still learn from the other oppositions and polarities in astrology. So for the rest of the conversation, because we're about to dive right into the 6 pairs, I just want you to listen as if you live on this polarity, because guess what? You do. You do. And I would like you to examine these polarities and these themes among these polarities and oppositions, right? From that place of, okay, I might not have this particular opposition in my chart, right? But I could stand to learn what these oppositions have to say to me. And then that way I could live from this learning, because all 6 pairs of polarities and oppositions in astrology carry tremendous wisdom that is both really comforting, right? And very instructive when looked at through that lens around how do we communicate these central organizing, negating, relational, how do we communicate these these relational contradictions? Okay. So here we go. The first one. How do we value both Aries ruled autonomy and Libra ruled connection? What's the unified opposites here? Okay. So what we know in couples literature and relational literature is that you cannot have we without me. Okay. And we, Aries ruled, Libra ruled we, creates Aries ruled me. All right. So big picture here, the self, the Aries ruled self with a capital S, not the ego self, not the shadow self, not the little self, the capital S self, right, that we're all trying to embody and express in this lifetime to the best of our capability, is built, according to relational dialectics literature, through relational dynamics, right? So the self is constructed through relationships. Oh, I love that. That's the unified opposition right there. The self is constructed through relationships. Why am I saying this? Because how many of us have either bought into, believed, or maybe even said, myself included, I just can't be in a relationship with you because, excuse me, I'm working on myself right now, right? And hey, it works well on the social media. You'll get a lot of engagement from it. It's very popular. Oh, excuse me, I can't love you because I'm working on me right now, right? And hey, there might have been a moment when actually you realize, oh, I do need to be alone. That was a separate issue. But let's not believe for one second that in order for me to love other people, I necessarily need to and have to love myself at full capacity and stand by myself in full capacity in order to love. We have enough hours in the day to learn self-love and relational love. Okay. And in fact, I do not know a more powerful, really, way of developing and cultivating self-love than through being loved and loving towards others. Do you? If you really stop and think about it, what cultivates your highest level of self-love? Your job? Come on, right? Your status, your level of certainty? No. We know very clearly in empirical literature and research supported by the Gottmans, long-form study at Harvard, et cetera, that the quality of our individual competency and the quality of our life is exclusively determined by the quality of our relationships. Period. End of story. So this idea of, I don't know how to focus on me when I'm in a relationship with you is either or. When we're moving to both ends. Right? So around autonomy and connection, to animate this with relational dialectics theory, this actually speaks to one of the most common relational dialectic functions, which is autonomy and connection, i.e., I really want to be connected to my partner and be with him, but I really want to be left alone at the same time. Then what? What do I do? How do I negotiate that? Right? Well, first, we normalize. We absolutely normalize that. And we do our best to negotiate with our partners for some boundaries, differentiation, and alone time, right? So differentiation is a fascinating concept that I learned from one of my podcast co-hosts. I host an astrology horoscope podcast with Good Risings. And there's a marriage and family therapist who does them as well. And her name is Elizabeth Earnshaw, and she wrote a book called I Want This to Work. And I absolutely love it because she's a fixed sign sun. She's a Scorpio. So she's really clear on putting in the book actionable, tangible steps that we can take to optimize our relational skills across an array of relational scenarios. And she really unpacked differentiation beautifully. And it's very Aries Libra. And it's this idea that, say, I'm in some level of a conversation with my partner, and I disagree passionately with what he's saying, right? And I want to maintain connection with him. I could find a way through differentiation to say and act on, I hear you, I understand you, I disagree with you, and I'll still maintain connection with you. Wow, that's differentiation, right? Because there are moments when maybe you would like, in your Aries ruled way, a particular emotional need. We have 8 common emotional needs, right? You might want a need to be responded to or satisfied, right? And then your partner, because of who they are, what they're doing, and the busyness of their life, might feel like that's not necessary, or they find it difficult because of the day that they're in, or whatever. And they are technically allowed to be like, I can't do that when you want me to, how I do it. And you can say, I hear you, I understand, and I disagree, and I'm maintaining connection with you. So that's differentiation. And when we differentiate, we are able to maintain connection across disagreement. Otherwise, we immediately go into relational cutoff. Okay, so when we don't know how to differentiate, we disengage, we cut off, because I don't know how to maintain connection with me and connection with you if there's disagreement, and disagreement in relationship is healthy, right? So this is Aries Libra. And I think that if we, once again, normalize, that keeps coming up just rather intuitively in this conversation. So maybe that's going to be something else that really animates it, is that we need to normalize any areas in relational astrological spaces that need to be like differentiation. We can then talk about it with our partners without the cortisol, without the stress, without the emotional adrenaline, which is only going to make sure that the conversation goes from 0 to 160 and have no productivity whatsoever, right? So let's just normalize the space between Aries and Libra. And then at their best, remember, right? This is really, it sounds kind of clinical and scary, but it's not. So at their best, Aries and Libra are what a couples therapist called identity-based economy in relationships. And it's that we choose partners, hello Libra, in order to become better versions of ourselves. Hello Aries, identity-based economy. I'm choosing this partner because I believe they will sort of have a Michelangelo effect on me, right, which is another psychological concept, i.e., when I choose this partner because of our differences, because of differentiation, because of our passionate disagreements, it will actually sculpt me to become the person I want to be. It will maximize my individual competency, right? And so that's very Aries Libra. And what would be great is if in these conversations that we have with our couples, and we might be in the me straddling the we, how do I maintain connection to self and maintain connection with you, right? We know it can be done. The win-win is there, right? And also, we know that in the vast majority of relationships, there's typically one partner who has a greater fear of oblivion and another who has a greater fear of abandon. Okay, so let's just take a moment and think about, based on your relational history and your relational present, do you have a greater fear of almost being obliviated in the relationship, like swallowed up in the relationship, like you lose your sense of freedom? Or do you have a bigger fear that you're in touch with around losing the partner, abandonment, and feeling like you're left alone? If it's a little bit of both, that's okay too. But typically we have one more than the other based on the childhood programming, the early stuff, yada yada, right? And so again, back to normalize, normalize, normalize. You, depending on where you are in the do I have a greater fear of oblivion or abandon, you will pick the exact opposite subconsciously, because that's how attraction works. It's the subconscious mind working like a heat-seeking missile, attracting us to people who might not always respond to our needs. Okay, because it brings up within us, well, damn, let me investigate these needs, and why am I holding someone responsible for what someone else did in the past, and how do I self-soothe, and but what do I do then? Right? So let's just normalize the fact that you will more than likely be attracted to the partner who is the polar opposite of you. Okay. And then here I was thinking that'd be the last thing I'd say. But I do want to just say one more thing too about the Aries Libra autonomy connection dynamic, which I find really inspiring. And that is, when you ask couples therapists what they've learned about how their couples can find a sense of attraction and longing for their each other's prospective partner. So i.e., the couples therapist will ask, hey person, when are you most drawn to your partner? When is your partner most drawn to you? A Libra ruled question. They will typically answer with a very Aries ruled answer, right? So they'll say things like, I was most drawn to this person when they were talking to me about something they were really passionate about, when they were really excited about a project, when they were in their element, when they were in their life force, when they were in their radiance, when they were on stage, when they were away, when they were somewhere else. I missed them. I yearned for them, right? When they told a funny joke at a party and I was watching other people react to that person who I love for the first time. And when I saw my partner, who's so familiar to me, reflected on the face and the laughter of a new person who was once familiar, became suddenly brand new again. And thus, I was most drawn to them. Okay. So what can we glean from these answers for Aries Libra? What we can glean from these answers is, number one, when we're in our Aries world autonomy and doing what makes us feel fully alive, who benefits from that? We do, of course, because hey, I'm where I want to be. I'm who I want to be, more often than not. I'm doing what I want to be doing. I'm doing it with who I want to be doing it with. Man, do I feel fully alive. I am in my Eros, right? I am in my life force. I'm in my radiance. So it's a gift we give to ourselves, make no mistake. But what's the byproduct of that? Is that other people are most drawn to you, hello Libra, when you are most drawn, when you are most standing in your Aries ruled autonomy. Why? Many different reasons, right? We're drawn to people who just have that je ne sais quoi, that chutzpah, that life force, that chi, that all these different words for the same thing, that same energy, gumption, whatever, right? We're drawn to that. And also, I think there's something to be said about a relationship dynamic where a person is in wanting, a person is excited, a person is passionate, hello, and not in need. Because we want our wanting to be wanted, Aries. We do not want our wanting to be needed. So Aries invites very little caregiving, even though it's the baby of the zodiac. But I just mean they don't need a whole lot from other people. They might want a whole lot from other people. That's a separate energy and emotion, but they don't need a whole lot. Okay. And so when we are in our Aries world wanting, we are feeling relatively free. We don't demand with a lot of need. We're just in our excitement, in our wanting, and wow, other people are drawn to us and we are most drawn to them. I think that's inspiring. And I think that can help you imagine, well, if my relationships really aren't giving me that, that energy that I've been wanting and craving, let me ask myself, have I been giving myself that energy? Am I going after what makes me happy? Do I turn myself on? Do I know how to turn myself on? How do I get to know who I am, the Aries ruled me, before I get into the Libra ruled way? Right? So these are big questions we need to ask ourselves. And these are tough conversations, but life-defining conversations that we can have with our romantic partners. So that is the Aries Libra polarity. Hello, the nodes currently in Taurus and Scorpio. So how do we find safety in the unknown? Right? So I want you to think of these keywords: dignity, value, intimacy, and trust. And there is absolutely so much here. Well, first things first, what I want to say is that I believe Taurus takes a stand for personal security. Scorpio takes a stand for trust, right? And the literature and the research on trust is actually pretty split. It's in polarity, duh, because what isn't these days? Around when I am looking to experience trust, do I have to risk first in order to trust you? Or do I trust you first and thus I know how to take a risk? Okay. Now, what does this have to do with Taurus Scorpio? Because risk, trust, this requires what? Security. Absolutely. And the way that we can understand security in our lives is by actively clarifying our two values. 100%. Absolutely, irrefutably, bottom line, end of discussion. I do not know a better way of cultivating Taurus ruled safety and security than actively clarifying what are my values, how do I live into these values, and how do I essentially have the life results to prove I am exactly who I say I am. And notice how I said the life results, because results are the ultimate guru here. Ultimately, we're not interested in what people believe about themselves or profess about themselves. It's like, okay, cool. What does your life experience have to say about that? How about your results? That's what Taurus is typically looking for in the level of security. You can pontificate and profess and talk out your you know what all day long. If your results are saying the complete opposite, I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Whereas if your results are there, right, then what? I know you are who you say you are, and you're grounded in safety and security. And when we are clear on our values, we know how to trust, and we can find safety in the unknown. Because I believe that our values really inspire us to take the decisions we want to take in the presence of the anticipatory unknown, the anticipatory setback, okay? And if we, in those moments, say, because integrity is my value, I'm going to have to call up this person and apologize, right? Or because justice is my value, I'm going to have to speak up if I see social injustice. I will do so calmly, respectfully, with observable evidence. I will make sure that other person doesn't feel shamed, but I will speak up because justice is my value, right? And when we do that, when we figure out ways to live into our values, we are experiencing safety. Do I necessarily know how the other people are going to react? No. But here's what I know is that I'm not responsible for the way other people react. I'm only responsible for who I am in the space of what's happening and how I choose to be while I'm in the space of what's happening. And my values will tell me how to do that. And when we're talking about, and that was all Taurus, values, living into them, having the results prove it. Like, I swear, my Taurus ruled friends, I can just see they check out when other people talk about their belief meanings and what they are musing on. They are exclusively, almost exclusively, I don't want to speak so simplistically here, they are almost exclusively paying attention to, oh yeah, how's that working out for you so far? So I hope you got a chuckle out of that if you're a Taurus. I actually love that about them because they're just like, you can save your belief system for an air sign. Let me know how that's actually applying in your results. Okay. So when we live our life into our values, I believe we cultivate really meaningful security. And thus, we have absolutely foundational skills to engage in the unknown of Scorpio. Scorpio is the underworld, Taurus is the above world, right? And when we know our values, we can move from the Taurus ruled known to the Scorpio ruled unknown, right? And again, here's where these are unified oppositions, and here's where they can almost negate each other. We don't really know what will happen in the unknown, but we know that if I take my values to those spaces, I would presume I would be relatively safe. And you want to know something? I've been very clear here to use the words safety, security, and trust because I need you to know that there is nothing comfortable about anything we've discussed so far with Taurus Scorpio. That's why I was talking about safety, security, risk, and the unknown. None of those concepts in theory or in implied behavior are comfortable. Not at all. So what are we doing? Normalizing, normalizing, normalizing. We will normalize the fact that as we live into our values, it will be really uncomfortable. It would be really uncomfortable for me to apologize, but I'd have to do it. It would be really uncomfortable for me to call someone in gently and say, you know, I couldn't help but notice a lot of the representatives here were heterosexual, cisgendered white men. Are we doing anything around diversity, inclusion, and equity? And are we putting people of color and others who have multiply marginalized identities in positions of power and authority instead of just like diversity optics, right? Uncomfortable. Necessary? Yes. So I just want you to realize that all of what we're talking about here, probably for the entire conversation, but particularly with Taurus and Scorpio, we will be extremely uncomfortable. But guess what? You can be uncomfortable and still be safe at the same time. That's right. You can be uncomfortable and still be safe. Discomfort doesn't necessarily mean danger. Okay, it just is discomfort, but you can be safe if your values are guiding you to where you want to go. All right, so a little bit more about trust is that privacy scholar Rachel Botsman defines trust as a confident relationship with the unknown. Oof, I love that. A confident relationship with the unknown. That's Rachel Botsman's definition of trust. And so the way that we can confidently engage with the unknown is by knowing what our values are and how we move across that bridge from the known to the unknown. And I believe, especially now, we are looking to find safety in the unknown. We're trying really hard to be able to do that in today's culture. And it is certainly not easy and it is really uncomfortable, but maybe there's some generative possibility there, right? And another thing that I'll just say about the Taurus Scorpio unified opposition kind of polarity point here is that what I know about my Taurians is, Lord have mercy, do they love pleasure? I mean, who doesn't? But man, does Taurus love to be around their favorite music, their people, great food, all aesthetic environment they have. They love the aesthetic force. They love to be connected to the arts. And I completely cherish and value that passion and conviction for them. Very few zodiac signs can set a vibe like Taurus. Oh my God, the lighting, the candles, the food, the music, the decorations, the table, the people, the fashion, the glamour, all of it. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Scorpio takes a different stance, which is Okay, that's real nice, Taurus. That, ooh, look at the lighting and look how good it smells and yada yada yada. But do you actually bear witness to and show up for discomfort in life? Or do you just want things to be comfortable and happy, happy, joy, joy? Because you can't just be in the above world all the other time. If you want to actually transform and live a life of meaning, you're going to have to come down in the darkness with me. And you ain't bringing these candles and this music and this outfit. Okay. You're going to screw up your manicure. Do you still want to be down here though? Right. And then Taurus says to Scorpio, well, Scorpio, okay, but let me tell you something. In order for you to live a life of meaning, you too, Scorpio, will have to experience joy. You will have to experience gratitude. You can't be afraid of joy the whole time. And yeah, I am bringing this up here because the researchers around what's called self-conscious affect, so it's the emotion that makes us think about ourselves, have essentially determined that the scariest emotion for people to experience is joy. Yeah. And I think this is a Scorpio ruled conversation because we all go into what's called foreboding joy, dress rehearsing tragedy, or living in the wreckage of the future when we're faced with the possibility of some really meaningful moments, right? And when we're really excited about something, I'm experiencing this a lot recently. So, it's in my bones. But when we're really excited about something that's going really well, what's the first thing we'll probably ask ourselves? When's the other shoe going to drop? When am I going to get sucker punched when I least expect it? So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get locked and loaded on worst case scenario, go right into self-protection, and thereby I'm going to protect myself from bad things happening to me. Because if I assume something bad's going to happen and then act like it is, maybe then I will be safe from criticism, rejection, heartbreak, disappointment. Right? Sound familiar? I know you're laughing with me. I can feel it, even though it hasn't even happened yet, but I can feel it in my bones because I do it too. Right? So normalize, normalize, normalize. We all have a fear of joy. Okay. So Taurus says to Scorpio, you cannot live in this hypervigilance, hyper suspicion, hyper skepticism all day long. I'm glad you can handle the dark. I'm glad you can bear witness to other people's pain. I'm glad you're the first one to tell me when something amiss is available. Yes, but guess what, Scorpio? Get out of the dark and into the light. And then Scorpio says to Taurus, okay, and get out of the light and into the dark every once in a while, because you too, Taurus, are not entitled to comfort 24/7. So you're gonna have to have both, right? In order for us to be available, the full contact commitment to relationships is I will bear witness to other people's joy as Taurus does magnificently. So does Scorpio, don't get me wrong. But I will also bear witness to other people's pain. I'll bear witness to their grief. Interestingly enough, the literature on trust shows that friends who show up to funerals and funeral participation and funeral attendance is a high notification of a person's trustworthiness. Right? And also, how about the friends that don't show up to your birthday parties or clap for you when everything's going well? So that's kind of my overview of Taurus Scorpio around trust, around safety in the unknown, around risk, around light, around dark, around above ground, underground world energy. But we need both. Life is both absolutely beautiful and it can also bring you to your knees. You know, in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Northeast at least, you know, we have winter and we have spring. We can't always be in the eternal spring of Taurus, and we can't always be in the eternal like fall winter of Scorpio. We need life and we need destruction and death, and we will be visited by both. So who are we going to be? What are we going to choose? And what are we going to talk about? In relationship, I'm sure that this manifests as you might be the one partner who kind of doubles down on safety, security, reliability, comfort. Let's just make sure we got everything we need because there's a lot of danger out there. And I want to make sure that we are prepared, right? And then you might be attracted to then, if say you're that person, to the partner that's like, okay, honey, thank you so much for the apocalyptic gear. Can we maybe go on a trip next weekend because I'm bored? Right? Or can we maybe, I don't know, live with a little bit more adventure and discovery and excitement and passion? Or are we just like locked and loaded and doubled down and getting nervous here? Right? We typically have a partner who takes a stand for security and safety, and then another partner who takes a stand for adventure, discovery, innovation. And we need both. We need both. We need the anchor and we need the wave. We need both. But I just want to give you that color and that context so that you can ask yourself, how do I talk about this in my relationships? Do I go into gridlock and go, you believe this one's such a killjoy? Or do we go into, you believe that one? Like, where do you live? La La Land? Have you seen what's been going on? Either or. Whereas if we go into the both end, we can go, all right, honey, what you want and what you value and what you take a stand for is so meaningful and necessary. You're absolutely right. We should be more thoughtful about our finances, about our budgets. And I would like to be really careful and considerate about the security and safety measures that we have in the relational culture. You're absolutely right. And I am so grateful that I'm learning from you and your legitimacies and proclivities in this area. And also, what I think would be really great is if every once in a while we step out of that and that we do take a risk and that we try something that may or may not work out and that we go on an adventure and we have novelty and demarcation. Is that something that we can do together? Right? And hopefully you can say yes to both and not either or. So that is my Taurus Scorpio analysis. Next, we're going to cover how do we perceive circumstances and vision thanks to the Gemini Sagittarius axis, one that I know very, very well. So the key words here are data, knowledge, wisdom, facts, and innovation. How do I know this very well? Because, oh my God, some of the most influential relationships in my life are all Sagittarius suns, and I'm a Gemini sun. So this is a polarity that I see all the time and experience the effects of all the time. And I'm so grateful for that. So this is actually, I think, with immutable polarities, I'll be honest with you. I think that because every mutable sign is essentially two for the price of one, you know, we're all born while a season is in transition. So each and every one of us is buy one, get one free, right? I believe that these polarities unfold really well together, right? So Gemini, Sag, Virgo, Pisces. Not that the other ones don't, but there is a little bit more of a kind of paradoxical nature within mutable signs already. So that's why they're like, oh, I didn't see it like that. Cool. Let's interrogate. Let's integrate, yada, yada. Okay. So what I mean by the Gemini Sagittarius polarity is that really what we're looking out is both the micro and the macro are important. You know, I kind of look at Gemini and I see this in my own life, and I've seen it with other Geminis that I've interacted with as like the zodiac's journalist. You know, they're always like, who, what, where, when, why. They want to get the scoop. Okay, so then what happened and who did you talk to and what time did this happen and then where did you go and who can confirm that and let me verify and cross-reference and let me get information from multiple sources. Hello. Let me get the data, let me get the knowledge, let me get the information. I need the intel. What's the scoop, right? And so they have their feet, believe it or not, more often than not, on the ground because Gemini's paying attention. They're the first responder. They're the zodiac's journalist. What's going on, right? Then the idea is Gemini passes the information that they've collected and synthesized to Sagittarius, who then asks, okay, how do I make the personal universal? How do I make the personal universal? And how do I take the details from you, Gemini, that you collected and provide it to the masses? So, oh man, I didn't want to get anecdotal, but I'm going to do it just because I live this every day. And I think this is actually really, this is an amazing example. So I am a huge fan of Sagittarius Taylor Swift, who has really written beautiful, personal, detailed lyrics that have become universal. So if you were just thinking about how do you make the personal universal, what are you talking about, right? So a couple of lyrics at the top of my head from the same song. Here we are again, and it's the middle of the night. We're dancing around the kitchen in the refrigerator light. Oof, that's really personal, right? But I bet that brought up an emotion for you or an experience where you were like, I didn't necessarily live through that, but I know what that means. And then in the same song, which is All Too Well, she writes the drama of the clearing the throat. I just want to make sure I get it right away. Okay. But you keep my old scarf from that very first week because it reminds you of innocence and it smells like me. Yeah. So these are really personal lyrics that she has translated and transferred into arguably what critics and her fans have believed is her most beloved song. And it's her most personal song. And yet it is universally adored. So, right there in songwriting, in movies, in mythology, we are looking for the universality in these stories, even though they might not necessarily be specifically related to us, will feel a sense of specificity, which is Gemini Sag, right? And so, in relationship to conversations in relationships, then what I think we'll always want to do with the Gemini Sag axis is sort of say, okay, this is the details, this is the universal wisdom. Now, how do we live from vision because you collected the circumstances? That's Sag's question. Gemini, thanks for the scoop. How do we live from the vision? And how do we transform this into wisdom and share it with other people? Right? So, and then essentially Sag looks at Gemini and says, okay, we got the details, we got the data, this is important, but what's the meaning? And how is this instructive? And does this even need to be shared? Is all knowledge useful? Right? And then Gemini can sometimes look at Sagittarius and say, well, not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily need to be instructive. It doesn't necessarily have to have an action bias, right? But Sagittarius, if you're just armchair philosophizing all day without a clear context of what's happening on the ground, people won't listen to you. And you need to understand. So here we go. Now we're going to go right into the real dialectic of Gemini Sagittarius, which is the fact that when we're talking to other people, we will often be engaging in persuasion and not even realize it. Like maybe I'm doing it right now, right? But we will often be in persuasion mode, or the politician, the preacher, the prosecutor. We're kind of trying to convince people of something. Okay. And that's why we go into the either or. And if I'm trying to convince you of something, what's the bottom line? Is that my theory is right and you are wrong, or I'm right, you're wrong, even worse. What I believe is true about the Gemini Sagittarius axis, and the person who put this forward as a Gemini maybe confirms this a little bit, but they realized, look, everybody, the central arbiter of whether or not a conversation is successful is not based on whether or not you agree with me or I agree with you. That's not what we're after. There are times and places for that, yes, legally sometimes, agreement and expectation wise, yes, but not actually a ton. Okay. So, what instead we're trying to do is look for conversations that cultivate understanding. So, back to the person who I was alluding to, his name was Anatole Rappaport, and he was an international relations scholar. And his line, which I absolutely love, is postpone persuasion until you can successfully articulate another person's point of view to their satisfaction. Oh, one more time. Ready? Postpone persuasion until you can successfully articulate another person's point of view to their satisfaction. Gemini Sag, right? Because when I am postponing persuasion and I'm just trying to understand you, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not a preacher, politician, or a prosecutor. I'm not trying to do anything other than ensure that there's understanding. And how do we do that? Through mirroring, through validating, through empathizing, especially mirroring. So, what that sounds like is when we're talking to people, we mirror back what it is that we heard in an effort to fact check for accuracy and let the other person, who is now the listener, formerly the speaker, feel understood. So here's what that sounds like. Oh, let me just pause for a minute to make sure I got that right. Are you saying you are unsure about A, B, and C because of 1, 2, and 3? You feel a particular way about that? Did I get that right? Can you say more about that? Or you were upset at me because of D, E, F, and A, B, and C? Here you go, right? We often don't realize that we're actually distorting 87% of the language and the linguistics that we're observing or hearing. Yeah, we have a 13% accuracy rate for communication. Ooh, yeah, so we're distorting 87%. That's why a mirroring exercise, which is, hold on, let me make sure I got that right. Oh, no, that's not what it was. It was this. Oh, never knew that. Okay, what else don't I know? Right? Encourages understanding. And then what happens is typically, because all parties feel heard and understood, because we're looking for vision, we're looking for facts, we're looking for understanding. Gemini Sag, what's the scoop? Then we're not going to go into a conversation gridlock. We're not going to go into I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. We're just here to understand. We're here to listen. And if we can bring those skills in our relationships, which is, I'm just going to postpone persuasion right here, right now, and just make sure that I understand why you believe what you believe or feel what you feel in an effort to mirror, validate, and empathize, then we are holding the big truth, which is that, well, I might not have experienced that. I might disagree, but I know that I have felt abandoned, upset, disappointed. I've been in grief before. I felt invalidated. I felt ignored. So at the bare minimum, which is really the maximum here though, because of how good it feels for other people, I can validate and empathize with what it is that you're feeling through conversation strategy. Because here's the thing, folks, here's what Gemini Sagittarius knows. None of us were just born knowing how to communicate. It's not as if communication skills are just in the air, even the air signs. Okay. And so each and every one of us are responsible for skill building in a way that allows us to communicate and function adaptively across contrast, polarity, dialectic, and dilemma. This is our work. This is our work. And so when we invest and take the time, like you are with this workshop, and I appreciate it, to learn about how you can use your words carefully and manage and move through complexity responsibly, then you are setting yourself up and your relationships up for great success. Yeah, because you just have the communication to do it, right? So, Gemini Sagittarius. Next, we're going to go to the one that I do have in my chart and live with very all the time, and that is the Cancer Capricorn polarity. How do we accept and regulate our emotionality? So I really love this polarity point. Oh, and the keywords are self-affect regulation, emotional exposure, and emotion regulation. I don't know why that question mark is there, because that's in there. So don't let that make you think that I'm like, emotion regulation? Oh no, that is absolutely what's there. So forgive me in that typo. So what I know about the Cancer Capricorn polarity is sort of what Dr. Susan David had says, which is that emotions are data, but they're not directives. Emotions are data, they're not directives. And so we are all responsible to get curious, to name and move through our emotions responsibly. Notice how I said move through. I did not say act. I did not say respond to. I did not say behave in a way of our emotions. I just mean get curious, name and normalize what it is that we're feeling so that we can manage and move through the emotion internally responsibly. Now, the beauty of Cancer is that I believe that what they introduce is the recognition that we are much more emotional than we are logical sometimes. You know, human beings like to believe that we are really rational and logical and considered, and we sometimes get visited by this strange phenomenon known as human emotion. Guess what? That's a myth. The complete opposite is true. Emotion is typically driving the car. Our cognition skills, maybe in passenger seat or in the back, locked up in the trunk, I don't know, but it's not driving the car. It's emotion. Emotion gets a stab at making sense of things first, not cognition. We feel things first. Cancer, thank God, right? And then we all have the responsibility to, especially around uncomfortable emotion or emotionally activating experiences, we have the responsibility to manage and move through those. And that's where Capricorn comes in. Capricorn is not this emotionally stoic, false compartmentalizing or, overly cold figure that distances and denies emotion, much despite what people like to say. I don't see this from Capricorn at all. Otherwise, why would they have the lower fishtail? the sea goat, the symbol of the Capricorn, is the upper mountain, the mountain climbing goat, and the lower half is the fishtail. Why would they have this experience and this symbolism if they weren't, right? So if they weren't emotional, and all of us are emotional, all human beings are. I just think that particular elements, particular zodiac signs express emotion differently, but each and every one of us are emotional, right? So with the Cancer Capricorn polarity, what I think is important for us to understand is that because emotions are data and not directives, we need to have particular systems and structures in place that allow us to name, normalize, get curious, and communicate our emotions in real time to the people who need to do it, right? So there's a lot of different systems out there. One of my favorites is Dr. Mark Brackett's. He's the director at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and he has a mnemonic device called Ruler, RULER. And when we are hooked by emotion, then we have to recognize the physiological responses of emotion when we're in it, right? We have to understand the emotion, that's the U, RU. We have to label the emotion. We have to express the emotion, and then we have to regulate the emotion. So regulate, understand, label, express, recognize, understand, label, express, regulate. And when we have those 5 steps in place, then we are allowing ourselves to feel the full spectrum of human emotion really deeply. We're not pretending, distancing, denial. We're not in people pleasing. We're just allowing ourselves to feel, right? And we're not moving and managing through emotion responsibly. We're just allowing all the emotion to come up. Then with Capricorn, what we need to remember is that sometimes we also have to realize that our emotions are real, but they might not always be true. So this is a really fascinating theory that's in a lot of clinical literature in psychological spaces, which is called real, but not true. And your fears could be real, your concerns could be real, your entire emotionally activating situations could be real, and some of them might not be true, right? And so that's why I call Capricorn energy moonstruck. So for a popular culture context, although I doubt anybody needs it, Moonstruck was a movie from 1987 or 8, where Cher famously smacked Nicolas Cage and said, "Pow, snap out of it." That's Capricorn. And how do I know that's Capricorn? Because look up Cher's chart. She was born with a moon in Capricorn. Hello. Okay. So sometimes we need a good stern talking to. And we need people to sit us down and say, hey, listen, you're allowed to be upset. You are not allowed to react this way. Feelings aren't the problem. Behaviors that you choose in the name of that feeling are the problem. So do you want to talk to me about specific behavior modification strategies that you're willing to commit to so that doesn't happen again? Capricorn just flies out of my mouth. Sometimes I'm a Capricorn moon. I'm sorry. But that's what we can see here with the Cancer Capricorn dynamic, right? And my twin sister, who is clearly a Capricorn moon too, she's raising her daughter, my niece Evelyn, with this amazing strategy. I absolutely love it. So she'll ask her daughter, who, when she's feeling a particular way, like, okay, honey, you're allowed to feel anger. You're not allowed to yell and raise your voice at mommy or throw things at daddy. So what do you want to do? Do you want to hug? My God, right? So what is she inspiring my niece to understand? Emotions are not a problem in this house. Certain behaviors are. So what can we do to cultivate healthier behaviors that allow you to function adaptively so that you can maintain your well-being and maintain respect and connection with other people around you? Emotions aren't the problem, behaviors are the problem. So now we need to ask ourselves, well then, okay, what behaviors am I committing to under Capricorn's guidance that allow me to have grit and adaptability across discomfort, across emotional activation, right? It's the Viktor Frankl idea that between stimulus and response lies our freedom, okay? So we all have a space between, I just got hooked by this emotion. They said something that I don't really know if I like. Meanwhile, sometimes I don't even say it. And now I'm feeling like just absolutely going to DEF CON trillion. but maybe I shouldn't. Let me take a deep breath. 3 deep breaths. Right? Let me choose a different behavior. What was that communication sentence stem that I learned from the Gottmans? Ah, right. Okay. Maybe I need to just self-soothe over there for 5-10 minutes. I'll come back to them when I'm ready. Invaluable skills. Now, isn't Capricorn also known as a zodiac sign of achievement, of personal impeccability, and all those things? Absolutely. And that's why, if we maintain emotional intelligence and emotional regulation, it's reasonable to assume that we will climb that mountain. Astrologer Joan Harrison made this beautiful video in Capricorn season 2020, where she basically said, in Capricorn season, we all have a mountain to climb. And I believe that there is no bigger Capricorn mountain than that space between an emotionally activating event and the behavior that we ultimately choose, especially relationally. Dr. Joanne Davila, who is a relational psychologist at Stony Brook University on Long Island, New York, has put forward 3 skills for healthy relational functioning. The first one is personal insight. The second one is mutuality. And the third is emotion regulation. So an irreducible skill for relational competence is emotion regulation, which is the idea of I am wounded, upset, and angry, but I will not react from the wound, the upset, or the anger because I am responsible in the way that I manage and move through my emotions. Capricorn. And listen, it's unpopular because the culture today is, wow, just prolifically emotionally self-indulgent. Well, I feel something, so I'm going to do this, and I feel this, so I'm going to say that, and because I don't like you, I'm going to go over here. It's just wild, right? And so Capricorn energy basically enters and says, oh, I'm sorry, do you think you're the only one who's had a bad day, who's stressed, who's doing this, who's doing that? You're not. So get a grip, respond carefully, and then we can have a serious conversation from there. And when we can accept and regulate our emotionality, we are working with an invaluable 1-2 punch. And again, especially relationally, I would be like, whoa, if I chose a partner who was like, lacked self-soothing skills, who was always on emotional adrenaline, or who maybe just didn't even express any emotion whatsoever. You know, they might not even be totally emotionally activated. They could be totally emotionally under functioning, and I would have no idea either way. But I am looking for, in my relationships and friendships, just people who can manage and move through emotion responsibly, period, end of discussion. They can feel their feelings, talk to me about their feelings, even if it's me who made them feel a particular way. And my behaviors, absolutely, but do so in a way that makes me feel like it was the emphasis on behavior, not my personality. And I have an opportunity to get it right. And that I'm not being accosted at based on what they're feeling. And this is a big system, but it's really invaluable, as are all the 6. But this one is really important. So Cancer, Capricorn. All right, next. Oh, I'm so excited about this one because I actually, when I was preparing for this, I wrote this question, but another reading really actually has kind of helped me think about this in a different way. So the keywords are worthiness, collaboration, leadership, and group dynamics with Leo and Aquarius. Oh boy, there's so much here. Okay, so the question is, how do we let ourselves be seen without harm? Okay, so how do we allow our inner worlds to be seen with others, to others, without risk, setback, disappointment, heartbreak, failure? I think you know where this is going. That's a fool's errand. It's not going to happen. If we are courageous, we're going to get sucker punched. It's just the way it is. It's the physics of this, right? But I would rather you get sucker punched from being courageous than getting sucker punched for like shrinking and hiding and minimizing and doing all that, right? And there is this energy around when we let ourselves be seen, thank you, Leo, with a group. We have to share power responsibly. We have to think about power carefully, right? We need to not take up an enormous amount of space. We need to make sure that we are distributing and sharing and making things accessible and helping folks to become the people that they want to be. But again, I'm actually just going to focus on something that came up in the reading after I prepared for this, because clearly that was meant to be. And so in relational literature and compatibility, it's important to remember that in today's culture, we sort of do make one special person, hello, Leo, the what really an entire community of people should be. Hello, Aquarius, right? So what does that sound like? I want one special person to be my best friend, my life coach, my financial advisor, my passionate lover, my chef, my co-parent, my therapist, my recreational advisor, all these things, right? When really that's what an entire community of people need to be for you. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to completely go off the script on this one because high Leo Aquarius, right? That's so funny because it almost does feel very Leo Aquarian. Ugh, I came prepared to talk about one thing, but now I really feel called to talk about another. So yeah, because I believe that we are taking a community's worth of expectations and putting it on the shoulders of a romantic and intimate partner. And that is really dangerous because one special person couldn't possibly give you what an entire village of people needs to give you. Right. And so, what's the way to really change that? What's the way to really figure out a possibility around expanding your community, but then also honoring your romantic partner? Well, first things first, I believe that we can learn a lot about intimacy and non intimate relationships, right? How we do one thing is how we do everything. And when we know how to maintain a sense of intimacy with people we love in non intimate relationships, then I think we're maximizing a really beautiful skill. And how we do that is through making our friendships more romantic and our romances more friendly. So I heard Marianne Williamson say that at a lecture that she gave in New York City a few years ago. And it just really, it was in a church, and I thought that church bells were going off. So I'll say it again. Make your friendships more romantic and your romances more friendly. And the idea here is what we can do in an effort to deepen our romances is bring the friendship ethic to our romances, right? Because isn't it amazing that like we almost become so hooked and dependent upon what a romantic partner does when we really don't do that with our friends too much? And if I had asked you, do you think friendship is important in romance? You go, absolutely. And then if I said, well, do you treat your lover like a friend? You might go, I mean, I didn't either. So it's okay. You know, I haven't always. And so again, yeah, how do you treat your lover with the friendship ethic? What level of expectations are you placing on them that probably shouldn't be placed on them? Right? What level of approaches do you have towards their behavior that you would never do to a friend? I want you to think about that, right? Like, would you get mad at a friend who like didn't text you back right away? You know, maybe you would. I don't know. I hope you don't. But we know we would get sent right to the ceiling if a partner did not text us back right away or like wasn't giving us the attention that we deserve. We become too hooked and dependent on it. Which is not to say that we ought not to need people. Which is not to say we should play it too cool. But I'm just saying let's dial it back a little bit and get our social sustenance, our emotional bank account filled from a lot of different interactions, not just romantic and intimate partners, right? And I'm sure you felt like that when you talk to other people, is that who you're in kind of non-intimate relationships with, that they're like, yeah, happy to see you, but they're kind of waiting for someone else to come in, or they don't really want to talk to you about you. They want to talk to you about like their romantic and intimate partners because, excuse me, that's more important. You know, you're just a friend. Yeah, and isn't that used all the time? It like minimizes the energy of friendship. That's really sad, right? And then you want to bring the best of romance to your friendships. So, what that looks like is really deepening your friendships with other people and allowing yourself to be vulnerable with friends and share your world with friends and just like expand your lexicon with other people, expand your social portfolio with other people. And, you know, I believe it's hard for people to make friends, to establish friendships right now, just given the state of the world and also too before the state of the world, you know, before COVID, a huge health concern among global health practitioners was loneliness. I think the number was astonishingly high insofar as the amount of people who felt like they couldn't rely on others because they didn't have friends or they couldn't call a neighbor and ask them to like feed the dog, right? So loneliness is a serious health concern. And I believe that it might be because we're not giving ourselves the capacity to deepen our friendships with other people. because we're afraid of the vulnerability or we don't have those skills. But spiritually speaking, really what you could just do is a couple little woo-woo strategies is kind of treat everybody you meet with that namaste consciousness. The love in me salutes the love in you. The love in me salutes the love in you. Say that out loud if you have that kind of relational culture, or say it privately on your way to go see somebody. The love in me salutes the love in you. I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you. Love and light, yada, yada. And you're just going to create a different energy. And you can give of yourself and of your excellence the best of yourself to a lot of people. And that is, again, how you can almost maintain a sense of intimacy in non-intimate relationships. You're allowing yourself to go deep appropriately. You're allowing yourself to expand your community. And then what happens is you're going to be overflowing from the amount of energy and sustenance that you received from friends, coworkers, family, strangers on the subway, the people you saw at the coffee shop, your waitress over here, right? All these different people you're getting a lot of emotional energy and support with, and then you're overflowing by the time another person sees you. And isn't that so sexy? Right? Would you rather the person who's like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you because I've been denying myself any possibility of socialization all day. So I've just been so fucking starving for you and I have this enormous adrenaline appetite. Do you want that? Or do you want, hi, oh my God, it's so good to see you. Ugh, I have just had the best day. How about you? Right? You can feel the energy. So the Leo Aquarius dynamic is make your friendships more romantic and your romances more friendly. And I think what we do need to talk about with our romantic partners is their communities, their friends. Tell me about them. You don't need to have a ton, right? Because this is about quality over quantity. But you want to pay attention to that. And then you want to ask yourself, how am I doing in the friendship department? Because, wow, I do need a big community or a wide community. Again, friends, family, coworkers, it doesn't matter. In order for me to actually really make that lover feel special. So it's like Leo as the special person, Aquarius as the community, and deepening those dynamics could be just so helpful and healing for you. Okay. So now we'll go to the next one, the last one. How do we heal the mind, body, and the heart and soul? So again, this is a mutable paradox. I don't think it's that challenging to integrate together, but sometimes it might be, right? So this is my nodal axis, and this is why I really love to talk about spirituality and research. So Virgo, Pisces. So I have a north node in Pisces, I have a south node in Virgo. And so here, what I know is that this is an energy that is concerned with the healing of the mind and body. I think we know which one that one is, Virgo. And Pisces is concerned with the healing of the heart and soul. It's all integrative and it's all essential, right? So we'll start with Virgo, which is that they know that a lot can be solved with water with lemon, 5 minutes of meditation, and a little bit of cardiovascular movement in the day. Let me tell you right now, they can get real clear Virgo energy on routines and rituals that optimize their well-being because they feel like it often gives them, and I can totally speak from a sense of experience here, we feel like it gives us like a psychic immune system, right? It gives us the ability to cultivate and proactively build inner emotional strength and the buffer and the resilience between us and potentially stressful things. The routines and the rituals will do that for us, right? And so it helps us heal the mind and the body. That's a beautiful thing. What about the heart and soul? What does that look like? Right? And so this is where Pisces enters. So Pisces might say, okay, Virgo, thank you so much for the water with lemon and the probiotics you gave me the night before. But are we going to talk about maybe some forgiveness tactics that you can have for yourself and other people if it's appropriate? Right? Can we get really responsible about things that we need to emotionally clean up and maybe make amends for? Maybe apologize to other people with? Because, wow, could that absolutely purify the heart and soul? Is a sense of radical responsibility for the parts that we played, right? In AA, it's called the Fearless Moral Inventory. The Catholics confess as they go along. The Jews have Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. Of course, the Miracles has the atonement principle, which if we give up our wrong-mindedness, where we feel like we made a mistake, the universe will undo all effects of our wrong-mindedness if we allow it. So there's this sense of humility, there's this sense of apology, there's this sense of deep responsibility and emotional work. That is a kind of twofold approach, right? And then there is forgiveness. Uh, I want to be clear here that there are certain behaviors that I believe would be really difficult for a person to forgive. So, Dr. Harriet Lerner, who literally wrote a book called Why Won't You Apologize, has said that she doesn't believe that forgiveness is always necessary. That is true. And also, it can be. So, around the healing of the heart and soul, I think that what we're talking about is forgiveness and atonement, forgiveness and responsibility, whatever you want to use. And you could do that through a range of approaches. And you can also do that for yourself, right? You can have a sense of self compassion and self forgiveness for yourself. And then who are you, if you gave it to yourself, to not give it away to other people, right? Um, so I don't know. I go back and forth on that one because, I'm a Gemini. So here we go. But I really do believe that, like, the big game I want to play is the game of just total forgiveness. I do. I'm thinking of the author Immaculée Iligabiza, who was a Rwandan genocide survivor. And she wrote a book on how her spirituality and her Catholicism allowed her to forgive the person who murdered her family. Wow. Like, that's one of the games. That's one of the big games I want to play, right? Because I have not experienced anything remotely close to that. And I'm not going to comparison suffering or anything like that. But I do look at someone like Immaculée and I wonder, well, why can't I? Why can't I forgive somebody for not doing things the way I expected them and wanted them to? Like I have the blueprint and the control, right? Why can't I? And when I do make that leap in my heart, and when I try to really put forgiveness forward and a sense of responsibility forward, what's extraordinary is that my life changes. I feel the less I feel the effects of contempt, anger, bitterness, judgment, and blame a whole lot less. And I feel so much better for that. Right. So it's a gift I'm giving to myself. Absolutely. A Course in Miracles says the spiritual seeker is generous out of self interest because we can only keep whatever it is that we give away. So if I'm giving away forgiveness, mercy, compassion, I'm doing that A, because I really want to give it away, but B, because I know that ultimately I can only keep whatever it is that I energetically give away, materially as well. But I try my best to give away generous assumptions about other people's intentions and behaviors and things like that. And I try to give away forgiveness and mercy and understanding because who among us isn't fighting a battle? Who among us isn't doing the best they can with the tools that they have and the resources they're living with based on where they're at? Who among us isn't? And so I want to be a person who has an energy of gentleness, of compassion and softness as often as possible, because we're living in a time where the default position to anybody different or who does things the way we don't want them to is defense and shaming. And the research is 100% clear. There is nothing sustainable towards personal development, accountability, and amends where shame and defense is present. It has a 0% success rate, and we think we'll be the exception to the rule. We won't. So I'm trying the Pisces approach right now. If you talk to me in a week, I might have changed my mind. But that's what I'm committing to right now. And Jupiter's in Pisces as this being currently recorded. And I just want to live in that place of, you know what? God bless them. Go with God if you have to. I want them to be happy. I'll stay over here. You might have to stay over there. But I will not have an adrenaline and an anger about you in the meantime. I will just wish you joy and peace. What I wish above all else is your peace and your joy. I hope that you can wish me joy and peace as well. So that's heart and soul energy. I do believe that. And I think that that helps us live a life with less fear and a little bit more love, right? Because I believe that the Pisces journey is the journey without distance from the head to the heart, where we're unlearning the dominant thought system of fear and remembering a thought system based on love, right? And how do we do that? I believe that we do that through ritual, through Virgo ritual, through Virgo routine, through a Virgo discipline practice, right? Because the way to be most powerful in this world is to know you are not of this world. So in order for you to realize that, you have to ground down, hello Virgo, every morning, preferably with spiritual study, meditation, journaling, gratitude practices, whatever feels right for you. But if we realize that we are the lamp, but we're not the light, we're the Virgo lamp, we're not the Pisces light, right? But if I plug in through a routine, hello, the light has no choice but to shine through me. And if I'm clear on that vision, if I'm clear on that path around healing the mind-body connection and the heart and soul connection, then I think we understand the Virgo Pisces polarity. Now, remember, because this is the second and only mutable polarities, Gemini Sag the first, Virgo Pisces being the second and last, then they don't feel like they're that different, right? But I do believe that we are all responsible for healing the mind, the body, and the heart and the soul. There's no doubt about it. And when we're clear on that, then I think that we create a little bit more on earth as it is in heaven, as above, so below. Because isn't that the Virgo Pisces dynamic, right? So just think about what you can do every morning, as can your partners, to, through ritual and routine, really clean up their mental and emotional and behavioral well-being, right? And if they have to start small, that's fine, but start somewhere, right? And then, are you having conversations that are geared towards mercy, compassion, transformative justice, love, responsibility, right? Are we having those conversations? Because I just read in a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money that all life is the set of our mind's images expressed. So our life is the images of our mind expressed outward. So if every morning we are grounding down in images of the mind that are loving, soulful, merciful, compassionate, and healing, our life will reflect that. So yeah, that's my analysis on the Virgo Pisces axis. I absolutely love this polarity. I learned so much from it. Because really what it comes down to is it Virgo research and analytics and data? Is it Pisces metaphysics, esoterics, and spirituality? It doesn't matter as long as we are healing the mind and the body and the heart and the soul, because that's what we're all after. From spirituality to psychology, we're only here for healing, aren't we? And what are we trying to be healed from? Fear, attack, defense, vigilance, adrenaline. We're trying to be healed from that. I don't know a better way than through routines and rituals to create a perception that's proactively loving because of what we studied and what we acted upon and what we decided to do that day. I don't know a better path. So that is that on the polarities. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Yes, it is. So I'll hit stop share and I'll come right back over here. And I'll just say that I hope that this was helpful and informative for you. Because I absolutely love the polarities in astrology, and I just wanted you to have the conversation stems to be able to talk about them effectively and think about how you dwell within them, right? And think about how it made you think about all of the qualities of your relationships with a little bit more distinction. That would be really great. And I hope that you are open to, in your next relational conflict or conversation, just saying, you know what? It's not either or, it is both and. And how do I leverage that really carefully and responsibly? So thank you for watching. I hope that this was instructive for you, and I hope that you and your relationships are blessed. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.